So give us a go ahead.
Yeah, let's begin.
Lovely. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. It's wonderful, to bring fellow practitioners together. And the whole idea of doing the webinar is if you want to learn something, put together a webinar with a bunch of experts. Now, the difficult part is that I have to summarize those introductions for people who are packing these long resumes. So if my panelists will bear with me, I've tried to do the best in terms of shortening the introduction. And what I do want to do, as I introduce you one by one, I will stop to ask you, what is your sales mantra? What's your driving philosophy? So I'm going to kick it off with Rajiv. And Rajiv is an ICF PCC certified leadership coach. He's a practitioner. He and I go back a long way as friends and as fellow practitioners. He's logged in 25,000 hours of coaching and facilitation and now across 18 countries work-wise. So, and of course, work goes across like leadership, covering all kind of industries and various skill sets. And now 30 years of experience across industries, plus also a professional career in sales with Innovara, Honeywell, and Dabur included. So Rajiv, let me invite you to share your sales mantra, if there's such a thing.
Thank you, Rahul, first of all, and looking forward to this 1 hour. As you asked that question, I think I'll answer it in two parts. There is a mantra in my mind and there is a mantra in action that I want to share. So the mantra in mind has been that, which I picked up from a NASA quotation many years ago, that failure is not an option. It's only a question of time, but failure is not an option. When you are in sales, that's not an option. That's my mind mantra. And in action, it's pretty simple. You just show up every day and be consistent. No rocket science.
Fantastic.
That's what has worked for me.
Brilliant. That's exactly what I was looking for. Let me introduce my next panelist, Raghuvir, who's the CEO of the Catalyst Training, specialization in sales coaching, game-based training, and he's been running sales workshops in B2C, B2B space. Also an expert in crafting experiential game-based learning journeys, now logged in 20 years of sales and marketing, including companies like GSK and Helion. He's coached and trained leaders across FMCG, IT, ITS, durable, real estate, etc. So you can see the tough job I have, condensing these massive CVs. But what I do want to do is invite Raghu also to share about his own sales philosophy or a mantra.
Thanks a lot, Rahul. Must say it's quite overwhelming to be part of this panel. Thank you for this opportunity. My sales mantra is simple and it's a bit different. I don't look at sales as sales. I prefer to see salespeople as what I call buying enablers, because we now live in an age where there is huge amount of information symmetry. There is enough of information available. And the job of a salesperson or a buying enabler is to help our customers to reach that point where they can take a decision. So how can we be not pushy and actually be partners with our clients in making that buying decision? So that is my approach to sales.
Fantastic. And welcome. And thank you for joining.
Thank you.
All right. And now for Rakesh Bhambhani, who is an ICF PCC leadership and performance coach. He is the founder of Power of Three Coaching, his firm. He's also a licensed practitioner of NLP, put in 30 years of sales and operation experience. Companies included are Dell, Siemens, Nixdorf, and NTT Data. So with more than 800 plus hours of coaching and 2,000 hours of sales, mentoring, training experience, so lots of hands-on experience, I turn to Rakesh to invite him and share his sales mantra.
So firstly, it's exciting to be here among great people. And if the audience has taken out time, it's fantastic. My sales belief, let me use the word belief, is your biggest wins don't just come from what you do. It actually comes from who you are when you do it. So it's all about who you are in the eyes of the client when you actually land up doing that. So that's the mantra that I truly believe in. And Since Rajiv spoke about mantra in action, I'm going to take that leaf as well. It's all about customer centricity and client alignment. The moment you're able to do so, you're no longer selling, your client is actually buying. So that's basically about it.
Very, very nice. I think the learning has already begun, with those ideas. So thank you for sharing that. Now, I'm just going to take a minute or two to talk a little bit about like what led to the webinar. So at Lumina, of course, we distribute Lumina sales, but we are also saying that, okay, you may be selling something, but better sharpen your own skills. And what better way than to invite sales experts and have a webinar? What great way to learn. But that said, that it is a very, very crucial topic, because sales is one thing which is the pretty much the engine of a company. And it's an engine that never stops. When business is down, you need more sales. When business is up, you need twice the sales, because in this world, the targets always keep growing up. And there at the base of it is a human being carrying that burden. So there are processes around him, there are circumstances, and then there's this human being who's not always 100% either. So what we want to do is start to examine with our experts, why do sales get stuck? Where do the sales teams get stuck? And I'm going to start off with my opening question, which I'm going to direct to all panelists. They can take turn one by one. And I have a question which has got two parts, so please bear with me. First of all, where do sales teams get stuck internally? Which is like whether it's the skill, is it the process, is it the system, right? That's one part of the question. And the other one is, there are various stages in a sales cycle, including prospecting, then convincing the client, and then closing out. Is there a particular stage in the sales cycle where you typically are likely to get more stuck? So I'm hoping that question was clear and made sense. And let me start with Raghu. Raghu, if I might invite you to take the first shot at it, right?
Sure. Interesting that you mentioned three things: the skill, the system, and the process. I'll take a slightly different view on this one. We all have been seeing a lot of quotations on various social media and various documents that we have read, that sales is about not about the product. They buy the person first. Yeah. So while organizations definitely will have their systems, processes in place, people do have skill, and skill is developed over a period of time. My personal belief is the missing link is the understanding of the person himself or herself. Right? The system and process is still external. There is a huge bit of internal element to this. Do I really understand what plays out well for me? More importantly, do I really understand what is playing out in the prospective buyer's mind? Because let's face it, the buyer is sitting in a plethora of information. And as humans, typically, we don't like the process of decision making. Decision making is too much of pressure, and we need help in that. The personality aspect is what I strongly believe plays out as a significant gap, because even in organizations, if you look at sales targets, it's always the end number. How much do we do? There is a process which takes care of how we reach there. But then there is no prescription which says, as a salesperson, how do I bring out the best in me? The system is external to me, but what works best for me is very internal to me. Not many organizations talk that language, that every salesperson is unique and every person can have a very different approach. How do I self-reflect and figure out what works best for me outside of the process? That to me is a critical element. Today, we are living in an age where people appreciate a lot of honesty, a lot of upfront information. Authenticity is something which people value a lot. And that cannot come through a process or a system. It can only come from the right reflection of who you are as a human being. And the moment we put ourselves there, we recognize what works well for me, and often what works against me, because we are humans. Not everything will work for us. Right? So we need to be aware of what can work against me. That awareness makes it much more easier to bring out authenticity in conversations, and puts us in a much more vulnerable position, which allows us to understand what is it that the buyer wants. So this whole personality aspect to it is what I believe. And people value relationships a lot. They want to be heard. right? But are we as salespeople spending time listening to others, the said and the unsaid, both? Or are we busy rattling off what we have to offer without really understanding what's there on the table for what exactly is the need that the other person is bringing to the table? That's my perspective.
Okay, I get that. So, all right. So I'll make a note of that. And what I'll do is I'll continue the conversation and then sort of I'll come back with comments at the end of it. So, Rajiv, again, back to it. Like, scale system process, or is there a particular stage in the sales cycle that tends to have more choke points? What is your view?
Actually, to me, what you mentioned, three are important things, but where in my experience, I have found most teams get stuck. I think it's to do with the mindset itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like most sports or athletic events will tell us, you win or lose in your mind even before you take the first step. And I think that is very difficult to teach, much more difficult to even analyze. But I can clearly see that over my experience myself personally and with a lot of people I speak with, industry leaders. Because in the same company with same product, same process, you have so much variation in the performance that you really can't pinpoint it to one of the missing elements in either process or skill, because all those are more measurable. So I think the mindset itself, and what a lot of articles call as the winner mindset, to me is the biggest area. If you think there is too much competition, customer is going to be challenging, I don't think I can sell, you will never sell. And in the same company, there is someone else who is selling tons of that product.
Mm.
So I would take that as a
So
point.
yours is
And
the
just
mindset.
to your second question, I think different people, I'll pick up from what Raghu said. Each one of us, bases our own self-analysis, can have strengths on various stages of sales cycle and could have improvement opportunities on different areas of sales cycle. Like if I'm taking my own case, if I'm a high on introversion personality score, then meeting new people, opening up, breaking the ice is a big challenge for me. But where a lot of people tell me I do well is listening to their demands, understanding their thing. And when I send the proposal, I actually use a language that they were speaking and that appeals to them, which basically my personality helps me to capture there. While someone else would have breaking the ice as their biggest strength, but maybe listening as their improvement area.
Mm. Excellent. But I do see the angle of the personality coming back here as well. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, Rakesh, I think I won't repeat the question. I think you've heard it twice over, but I'd like to hear your view.
Absolutely. So let me, being the third in the row behind two geniuses, it becomes a tough job. So I'm going to give it a dash, though. First of all, the word stuckness, if I may just call it that, it's not loud, by the way. If you really ask a salesperson, where are you stuck? The answers are not going to come so vocally ahead. It's actually more hidden. And if you really dissect that layer, you'll sometimes find it hidden in a proposal stage, where you give in a proposal to a client, it's pending decision for a very, very long time. Sometimes you give in a POC document to an influencer or to a person or to a stakeholder that you have good connections with, and it just doesn't move from there beyond that, because sometimes that influencer is not the right influencer or decision maker. So, stuck, that sticks, that word stuck, that stuckness is more invisible or more hidden. And if you really further, think of this as a doctor, I rather look at it at four layers. One is the process layer itself, where you have six sales stages. The dashboard is there. You might have implemented different kinds of processes like sales progression index or a span or a SPI or whatever those are. Uh, it tells you where that deal is actually stuck, in as many words, if the number of days in that deal are actually increasing, right? And that's when you start thinking, hey, what's really going on over here? So that's the process level thing. The second layer is actually the competency level layer, or I call it the muscle layer. Over here, you're really talking about the behavioral gaps or the behavioral traits. Let's not call it gaps. Let's talk about it as a trait over here. For example, if this person is been talking to this influencer for a very, very long time, let's say 3 months into a deal, why is he not really going up to meet a CIO or or somebody senior stakeholder? What's really stalling that? Now, is that really person having challenges relating to people at that level? So that's the second layer, which is the muscle test. The third layer is the psychology layer or the MRI level, if I may really call it. And we're just using terms that doctors use. Over here, you're really talking about, and I love this concept, and I would like to share this with everybody, the concept of FIE, fear, ignorance, ego. Hey, I'm not talking to this person, to the CFO, because I'm not too sure if there is a business case that I can articulate. That's a fear within me, which is actually coming out. The ignorance could be, hey, you know what? I'm very comfortable dealing with this particular stakeholder. I really don't want to go to somebody who's going to make me uncomfortable. But that's the real key decision maker. So that's the ignorance speaking of that person. The ego element is my proposal. I don't care what your needs are. My product is the best. So that's the FIE at play. And that's the third layer called the MIE or the MRI layer. And the fourth is the context. It is so important for us to understand and appreciate the context of the client. The context basically comprises of belief systems of the client, value systems of the client, the culture of the client. So in short, a long answer, but these are the 4 layers which actually help you as leaders dissect where your deal is stuck and what probably could be causing that. Because no 2 clients are the same, no 2 sales makers are the same, and no 2 stakeholders are the same. Everybody is unique and beautiful. Sorry, long answer.
I like the way you're smiling. Say beautiful, In sales, we use a very different word for such customers. So sometimes.
No, this is good. And what's also interesting is that the human element, which I think everyone's convinced is the big piece, is also the one that perhaps is getting neglected a little bit. So I'll stay on that theme of the idea. I also picked up these interesting ideas of, authenticity is what they're looking for. The mindset is key. And I really like that FIE thing. That's very, very interesting. These are the self-created belief systems that can actually sabotage us even before we start. Very nice. All right. So, Raghu, I'm going to come to you and going to pick up on that idea that Rajiv touched upon. Why do 2 salespeople, given the same product and market, and perhaps even the same training, deliver very different results?
Okay, that's a tricky one. We do see that in a lot of organizations. In fact, every single individual has very different ways of going about meeting their sales targets. And it's kind of connected to what Rakesh was trying to put in here. And I take off from the FIE part. As individuals, I think each one of us has got a very different set of fears that govern our behaviors. For example, I might be a person who has got no qualms in calling up the CIO or CTO of an organization and have a conversation. Whereas somebody else would be much more comfortable playing the game of long term and slowly building the connects over the ladder of the organization. So that's one that differs. So the comfort of an individual to reach out to people. That's one. The second is something that I call vulnerability, and it's very interesting. I was just wondering when Rakesh, you were mentioning ego. Sometimes when I want to meet the top boss in an organization, the governing philosophy, the governing thought in my mind is, what is it that I can give him? Whereas somebody who comes in with a flip of that and says, okay, let me not give anything to him. Let me have this conversation with him or her with a mindset of how well can I understand this person's business? Okay, because the moment we take the other path that, okay, I have the best product, then I'm taking the stand of arrogance that I know more than you.
Mm.
How this manifests as a difference between different people, Rahul and everyone, is how open am I to be vulnerable?
Mm.
Right? Somebody else may not. That doesn't mean that the other person who is not open to be very vulnerable doesn't have a way to get the sales. He or she can still get the sales by playing purely on facts. I can always not reach out to somebody. I may be very good at research. I may be very good at reading up stuff and finding out stuff about the organization. But I may not be comfortable having a conversation straight away. I will have a very different way of understanding. So each person plays the game very differently. It's almost like, okay, Rahul Dravid and Virendra Sehwag are equally effective. Right? The difference is the moment Virendra Sehwag sees a ball, the only thing he knows is this has to go out of the boundary. This ball has no place in the 30-yard circle. Its place is outside that. Whereas Rahul Dravid has got a very different technique. Right? And that happens because of the expertise that they have built in over time and how they are able to apply into the game. Both are equally effective. Yeah, so that's my take. And interestingly, from what I said earlier in the earlier question, the system, the process, everything remains the same. The system process supports equally these two people, but how they utilize it is very different. It's about how well am I able to connect to an individual or able to connect to the need of an organization. We all have different ways of doing that. So that's one. The second is something that I call buoyancy, and I'll speak about that in a while. The ability to bounce back. Sales is not a profession where everything is hunky-dory all the time. Right? There's a lot of, it's a game of rejection, let's face it. The more rejections you get, the more deals you get. As simple as that. But the way I deal with a particular kind of a rejection would be very different from the way, let's say, Rajiv deals with the rejection. Okay, so the techniques of making ourselves resilient, the techniques of making ourselves accessible to our customers are very different. There cannot be one single way of doing it. And all of them can be effective if I'm aware of that. I'll stop here. Yeah.
No, Raghu, this is good because in a way I see the underscoring take a very, very strong shape. You talked about vulnerability, which seems to go hand in glove with authenticity.
Yes.
Something that you talked about, right? And then we are talking about resilience. And so we are back to the mindset idea, correct? So very interesting. And all right, I'll continue to persist on this whole idea of the external part. And so I'm going now to Rajiv to ask, Rajiv, is sales success, given all of this, sales success reliant more on the the techniques or the personality trait?
And I'm not going to take a percentage point on your choices, I'll answer it in a maybe more complex manner. So when when I was listening to Raghu and Rakesh, interestingly, and I was reflecting on some experiences. So when you talk about, say, the process or personality part, I think of it like a Rubik cube, which has got multiple sides. You finally want to get all sides and colors aligned to get the end result. The challenge I have seen is that many of us are adjusting one side of the Rubik cube, getting it correct, and we are still not getting results because that one side, when we are getting in color, is automatically having a ripple effect on two or three other sides, and they are getting misaligned now. So if you teach only selling skills part, introduction, opening, questioning, listening, fab, closing, blah, blah stuff, and you can actually measure people doing role plays multiple times, all that thing, they are doing fantastic part. You also have to look at, as Rakesh and Raghu said initially, the salesperson's personality and also the customer personality and the context of that day and the environment, competition, market dynamics, etc. Now, all these sides of the Rubik cube have to fall in a reasonable aligned shape for you to get the deal. You work on any one side in isolation, I don't think it'll lead to a lot of success, because As soon as you want to get the personality part aligned and you're not focused on skills, that's also not great, You are only focused on process part, disowning the personality, it's not going to get you high results. You will remain an average salespeople. But if you want to become a star salesperson, you got to pick up that Rubik cube multiple sides, and then what in personality we call as have some intuitiveness to hopefully get most of the sides aligned in a reasonable manner. So as I said, I'll give you a complex answer to a simple question, but that's what
You
I
did.
think
You
about
did. Let me
it.
try and see if I can get a vote out of you. So, do you tilt in the favor of, like, what do you prioritize, Rajiv? Do you prioritize the human being and their personality construct as more important, or is it that you can take anybody and then the training and the skill set can define it? I'm just trying to see if you weigh
So,
in either side.
and I think for that, I could possibly have an answer, but it's again layered with on what kind of sales you are doing and what kind of sales cycle does that have. I'm saying, imagine I walk into a shopping store and I just want to buy a shirt or something which is a low value purchase for me, possibly.
Right.
The salesperson, if they're only focused on process and they've been taught how to greet, how to answer my objections, and how to really close demand in the end without really going into too much of personality, could still do a reasonably good job of selling. I think it is possible at that level of sales. The kind of sales that Rakesh was possibly referring to, which is like, it takes time, you got to meet multiple stakeholders, the stakes are high. Those, I think, can't happen if you don't bring in the personality part. If you only go with process, you're not going to get into that high intensity, high level of sales. But I think it's some amount of transactional sales, a pure process if you're good at. I do think, and maybe because I'm biased, we've been teaching selling skills for so long. How would I sell selling skills to a client if I can't claim that it improves the performance of salespeople? Uh,
Wonderful. I was trying to protect your business by asking that question. Interesting what's emerging. And because I've got Rakesh, who I think is equally passionate about personality and then sales, right? Rakesh, can it happen that if a person has a certain strength in their selling skill set, is it possible that they might overuse certain strengths to hurt their own cause?
So, a simple answer is absolutely yes. You could land up utilizing a particular quality that you have. But the question that really stems out of that is, Rahul, why does somebody land up overutilizing a particular quality? Okay, that's the $1 million question in the room, very honestly. And this goes back to the opening statement that I made, that your biggest win doesn't come from what you do, but from who you are when you do it.
Right.
I spoke about, and Raghu and Rajiv has beautifully spoken about that as well. No two people are identical. No two needs are same. For example, within the same organization, the CIO or the CEO of an organization would want to accomplish a different outcome through a project, while the influencer, 3 layers below, might want to accomplish a different outcome through that, very clearly, right? So the outcome itself is not similar. In that case, how can you land up using the same quality for an influencer A as well as the CEO who has a different outcome altogether? The point I'm trying to make is we are blessed with 24 qualities. And I'm using the word 24 intentionally over here because and I'm a big fan of Bhagavad Gita, verse 18, chapter 18, chapter 16, verse 3. It actually speaks about the 24 beautiful qualities all of us are blessed with. Now, the question is, if you're blessed with so many qualities, why should I, as a human being, really talk about, oh, this is my strength and this is my weakness, so I'm going to use more of my strength and less of my weakness? What if the CEO is actually of a different type who my strengths may not work? So am I just going to give up on mapping that CEO? The answer is no. And that's why change is the only reality of life. As sales makers, you got to be open. So for example, and I may digress a bit over here, but if somebody tells me, hey, you know what? Which verticals do you like focusing on? I see that as a constrained question. Sales is all about dealing with humans. We are humans dealing with humans, where the only objective is to add value to that other person. Now, if it is as abstract and as broad as that, why should I say, hey, you know what? I am a red, I am competitive. So I'm going to use this competitive skill with the influencer who's more empathy driven versus a CEO who's more competitive driven. As a sales maker, I got to be mindful of both. So in short, be open to learning more and more and exploring more and more of your own qualities. Please do not, and this is a saying that I tell all my clients, don't convert your ability into a capability. Now, what is a capability? An ability with a cap on it is capability. Why do you want to cap something? If you are born broad-based, open-minded, you can explore anything and everything. Why would you want to just narrow it down to a few qualities and say, every transaction, every deal, I'm going to approach it this way? If you want to master the art of, and that's what Rajiv said in his initial conversation, master the art of developing a growth mindset attitude to start with, because that's the foundation. If you want to develop an ability where you develop empathy, genuine empathy for the other person, whereby you're able to absorb needs of the other person without any bias. If you wish to develop an ability, develop an ability of advocating what will work for that other person and not what you're selling. And finally, if you want to develop an ability of co-creation. Customer buys, you do not sell. If you are able to flip that in your head, that's it. Sales is a lovely, and that's where we started the session with, right? How much do you love sales on a scale of 1 to 5?
Wonderful. So it's interesting, Rajiv, this Rakesh, so it's like bouncing on the opposite side of things again, because what I'm hearing is that one, if we go unidimensional, right? It's like if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail, right? And what has worked for you in the past, right, may not work today. That whole story that what got you here won't get you there. So and now then comes the other part, what like Raghu talked about, that you have to bring vulnerability. So you're not bringing vulnerability if you're married already to the idea, because you see no need to adapt. And then what Rajiv said, mindset. Well, this is the other side of the mind. This is called a fixed mindset. So I think it's kind of very nicely all coming together. I mean, I hear it. And since you talked about personality, yeah, it does happen. I don't think, you started by saying, why is a person overusing a strength? Well, because maybe they don't know, right? And because they don't know, they probably have a good reason for using that strength. But who are they in the eye of the customer might be a horrible thing. So I think it's like really summarize this whole puzzle pieces coming together. Now, which takes me to the next part, which is what most of us over here are all about in terms of the sales training program. Many people all of us are, this is our bread and butter. And then there's many people in this call who either are buyers of training or providers of training. So then comes the hard question. And I think I'm going to give it to all the panelists. In your view, why is it that many sales training programs fail to create the desired impact? Where is it that they generally fall short? I'm tempted to invite you one by one, but is there anybody who wants to take a first stab at it?
Okay, I'll take that then. I was waiting to say yes to whatever Rakesh or Raghu may have said, but I'll take the first stab on that.
Good one.
So I think, and this is again personal experience, all of us would have different experiences. I think a lot of training programs around sales or selling skills largely focus on process. And they miss the personality part totally. You look at curriculum on web of 2-day, 3-day, 5-day selling skills program. It would start with, say, buying stages. It would start with how do you get customer information or prospecting. It would start with how do you enter, fix appointment, give your greeting card, shake your hand, all that process part. And there is so much push on that sometimes a new person who enters sales ends up believing that if they just follow the process as has been taught in the selling pro training, they should be extremely successful. Unfortunately, they are applying a lot of those things, but they are still not successful. And now the frustration tends to build up. And when they go back for a refresher, they are again told to go back and do some more things of the process, not really of the personality. So in my experience, I think why a lot of selling skills programs are not getting the results is because it's largely currently, as I see, more process focused, and we miss what at least all three of us I hear believe the biggest differentiator is one human being interacting with someone else. Forget the process of sales or buying, selling.
Hmm. True, true. And that resonates with what Raghu was talking about. And I think it's a very often used phrase in sales. People don't buy the product, they buy the person first. So very nice. Well, then fair transition. Rakesh, you're coming in?
Yeah, this time I'm going to come in. So, yeah. Um, the core word is that one word is sustainability.
Hmm.
The reason why any initiative, be it a process deployment of implementing a Salesforce or a HubSpot or a CRM in an organization, to a training, to a mentoring program, to a coaching, and I've seen capsule coaching nowadays coming up. The reason why most of these initiatives fail is because it doesn't it doesn't give the window to the person who's absorbing all this content uh, the duration to really reflect on it. For example, if it's a 2-day program and the person is expected to go back, you're not giving that person the hand holding, uh, support to experiment and tell him, hey, I'm standing behind you. Don't worry, just go ahead and experiment. So the core point is sustainability, number one. And number two is whatever you do, are you really working on the belief of the other person? Now, when we speak about beliefs could be at three different levels again: individual level, the leadership level, uh, and the organization level. But let's not forget, there's a similar belief system parallelly standing at the client side as well. You know, and the success is all about these two belief systems finally aligning with each other.
Hmm.
So whether it is training or it is whatever, training or mentoring or even implementing a Salesforce platform, for example, is there a way you could actually incubate ways to ways whereby the sales maker can actually work on those things and help change those beliefs that they have? Because, and we spoke about 24 qualities, Rahul. I personally believe, let's say if a sales maker is 30 years old, 35-year-old, or 40-year-old, they would have used all 24 qualities in their life.
Hmm.
Just sometimes we don't remember because we have sometimes just simplified it to, oh, you know what, these three qualities are my strength. So I am a coffee sales maker. What do you mean by that? Oh, I'm just going to go have coffee with my client and the relationship will be formed. These are alibis that we are actually, developed over a period of time. So, long answer short, whatever you create as a program needs to be sustainable. The person needs to have that window to experiment, explore, experiment, and then make it second nature.
Very nice. It's interesting as I'm beginning to contrast the idea of the skill, and then you bring the whole idea of philosophy, of our adaptability to the people that we deal with. Of course, it's almost like art. You can go to an art school, you can be taught the technique, you can even paint the horse that looks like a horse, but it may still not be art because art is soul. Art is that ability to see the human side, which I think I'm almost thinking that you have to begin with the skills, but then you have to also undo some of that training to be able to bring the human side.
Yeah.
Hmm. As I listen to that, I'm just getting overwhelmed. It's beginning to become more and more complex, the whole idea. Raghu, why don't you go and pile on to my
Yes.
misery some more and make it more complicated?
No, I just
Why do
file up
sales
what.
training fall short?
Yeah, why does sales training fall short? Unfortunately, it's not. The answer is not. I agree with Rajiv and Rakesh. There is more to it. So there are a few parts to it. One is if the input is garbage, the output is garbage.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is, in a lot of cases, the expectation of the outcome of the sales training becomes a problem. The expectation seems to be that, okay, as soon as my team goes through this program, they will become superstars in sales. But that's not the case. It's definitely not going to be there. And this has got to do with the kind of metrics organizations are measuring. We all are aware of the standard SPANCO funnel, the suspect, prospect, approach, negotiation, close, and order. Unfortunately, all business metrics keep talking about the order part, which is the lag parameter. It's not the lead. What does this do to the salesperson who is coming to the classroom? And the salesperson is taught that, look, sales is not about closing a deal always. Sales is all about bringing the buyer closer and closer to the decision. It's like a ladder. You cannot expect the customer to jump from the floor right up to the sixth rung. He's going to hurt himself. Our job as buying enablers is to get the customer step by step up the ladder. Now, this is what the participant is learning. But the day he or she goes back to the workspace, all that he or she hears is, what's the output? Number kitna hua? Number kyun nahi ho raha? Why is the number not happening? And that's where the problem starts, the dissonance starts. What needs to probably also happen is respect the fact that there is a reason why it's called the sales cycle. There are 6 stages to the sales cycle. Right? Otherwise, life would have been very simple. Prospect hai, deal hai, khatam, it's a straight line. But that's not the case. There is a whole cycle which is there. Sales training programs, need to tell participants the truth that sales is a long process and it is painful. I think that truth needs to be told, that it is painful and you need resilience to reach there. B, organizations also need to start measuring the lead parameters. How about, instead of only measuring the output, can we start having conversations of, okay, how is your prospect funnel increasing now? How well have you understood your total addressable market? And hence, from 10 possible customers, are you able to at least visualize 15 possible customers? How many of those have you actually gone and met right now? What has been the outcome of those meetings? Without saying deal hua ki nahi. Because remember, the goal of each meeting is the next step in the funnel. So fundamentally, that is a big difference. The expectation, organizations also need to be patient. They need to invest in sales with a long-term vision in mind. The outlook should be, I am preparing my sales team like a sapling. I'm pouring water on it every day so that it becomes a strong tree 2-3 years later. So investment in sales programs need to be more from a 2-3 year vision, not from an immediate vision that in 6 months people will become Superman. I think that is a fundamental problem.
And Rahul, I am tempted to add one more, without even you coming to me. I think the other big missing link has to be the job that the line manager of the salesperson is playing on a daily basis when they are doing field accompaniment with them. You teach or train a person on many of these skills. Ultimately, like Raghu is saying, they end up mostly doing what the boss is asking them. In my experience, wherever we have been able to convince an organization that, okay, this is a selling skills program, one, all the managers also need to go through that as a participant. Second, we add on a component where the managers are now trained how to coach the people on selling skills only. It's not coaching as, life coaching or leadership coaching. And if that line manager can coach the salesperson on whatever process you are teaching them in the class on a daily basis, you will see significantly different results and outcomes. I think that's the biggest missing link. How do you get the line manager to take ownership of enhancing the selling skills capability, ability of the team, and not a classroom training program.
And if I can just further build on that, if you don't mind, one way is to what Rajiv mentioned is just transform your Salesforce implementation or HubSpot implementation or the CRM implementation, transform that into a belief system. For example, convert your software platforms into a belief system. And this is something, by the way, we've done for a few clients, so I can talk about that. The moment you tell your sales maker, I believe you, just imagine the way the weekly calls shift. Because the accountability has suddenly shifted from the sales leader to the sales maker, you know? And if we use neuroscience techniques on that, the personality, things on that. For example, you met the senior most stakeholder. Yes. How do you believe is your relationship on a scale of 1 to 5? 5. Now it's for him or her to maintain that at a 5. So when you start, and this is called the invisible coaching, if I may say so, sustainability. Whatever you do at the end of the day, on your weekly calls, on your daily conversations like Rajiv ji just mentioned, are you actually speaking numbers? Kitna kiya aaj? How much have you done today? Or, hey, how's your relationship shaping up with this individual?
Yeah.
That shift can actually create far more inertia than how much have you done today.
Fantastic.
Because you don't need a sales leader for that. You just have a dashboard that's good enough.
And goes back to the word that you used earlier, sustainability. So what I'm hearing is you put a person out there in a classroom, you give them the requisite skill set, right? It's like, you go to all these health spas, you're there for 10 days, you lose like it's an amazing 5 or 6 kilo. Then you're back in the system, a fridge full of ice cream. So you've got to have the system in place. So when you got the person come back, it's the system that's supporting you, which is what like I think Raghu talked about, that it's the system that you're coming back to. Is a system supporting you? Is the system being trained to support you? And then Rajiv point out the biggest link in the system is your line manager. I mean, that's the person who's there to mentor and otherwise. And so do they sustain? And then, of course, just as sales is a long-term process, making your salespeople seems to be to make them effective seems to be a long-term process. And I think because there's just so much daily pressure that ultimately, under pressure, we all revert to the animal and we go back to number ka kya hua. So the interesting thing is that there is seems to be not just like an individual training, it also goes into the culture building of the sales leadership. What the sales leadership is.
Absolutely.
I've got my eye on the clock, but sorry.
May I just step in?
Yeah, please.
Interesting point on culture, and it's no surprise to us that we all come from apes. And there is a very common phrase which is called monkey see, monkey do.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? We are prone to mimic things that are happening around us. So if you had gone to that spa for 10 days and you come back and you spend the next 1 month with the same set of people who went to the spa with you, you are highly likely to change, because that's the behavior you're seeing around you. Similarly, in the sales setup also, I would eventually end up doing what I see people around me doing. So if my boss is only having a conversation and saying, let's meet XYZ client to talk about ABC deal, that's what I'll do. Vis-a-vis, if my boss says, let's just meet up with clients, let's not talk business, let's just meet up with them. That's the behavior the team will start demonstrating. So the culture is a big part.
Totally. And I like that. It's like, I forget now who said it. He said, show me the 5 people you hang out with, and I will tell you your future. Right? So it's so much to do with that. Okay. I've got my eye on the clock, but I do have a question for you. It's also a bit of an opportunity to plug in my own experience with sales and sort of on the wobbly feet. So question I'm going to go to is that suddenly sales is beginning to look like the tapestry of India. I talk to people in the design field, in the art field, in the food field. And you say, we say there's Indian food, we talk about Indian fashion, we talk about Indian design, Indian architecture, no such thing, right? I mean, from one end to the other, there's so many things. So you can't bucket India. And suddenly sales is looking like this extremely complex matrix, which is defined by not only the stages of sales, but also the kind of product we are selling, high to low involvement product. What are the kind of channels, a B2B, B2C? Now you layer the personality, and Rakesh talked about the 24 personalities, that qualities, and we also talk about the personality traits. Suddenly, like you are mirroring. And I think there's so much to do with eliminating the stuff you don't need to be doing, because like Rajiv said, that depending on what you're doing, there is a different kind of ability and skill sets that's required. So it is complex, but again, I think it's so much about being strategically targeted to what are the areas you need to focus on. And which brings me to the question, which is my last question, and hopefully there's some time for discussion after that, which is to say, what kind of frameworks and tools can sales leaders and HR people use to diagnose their issues in the sales team? Do psychometrics have a role to play in helping overcome such challenges? Correct. And just from my perspective, let me just sort of talk about my bias. Besides that, being a distributor of a product like Lumina Sales, I learned personally a lot about sales. I saw myself as a sales cop out, but then I discovered sales require many traits. I may not be strong at the closing, which is where I'm struggling, but sales is more than just closing. And there are many other traits where you know, where I am operating fine. So for me, the psychometric gave me a revisit and hope about my own sales ability. But what is the kind of tools and frameworks that can help, and what role do psychometrics play in helping overcoming the challenges of where the sales team is stuck? So again, Rajiv, why don't I go with you? You've used both the tools, so.
So I think mm, difficult to just pick up one thing or one tool that will be a great asset. But I think on every aspect we have spoken today, you have diagnostics, you have observations, and you have methods of analyzing and observing, evaluating people on those.
Hmm.
And depending upon the maturity of the organization, the maturity of the people, you pick and choose what serves your purpose. Uh, I would still think you start with at least some element of a very high level process diagnostics. Is our team good at a specific stage of the sales process, or it's mixed? And interestingly, why I'm raising that point is because, at least again, in our experience, going back to some of the examples Raghu was saying, the behavior picked up, monkeys following monkeys. When you do any of these analysis, it's interesting that whichever thing the manager is strong or weak at, you often see that reflection in the sales team. Most
Hmm.
often you will see that. Now, that's the process part of it again. And then if you could also add a diagnostic or a tool around personality, but largely this is only the personality of the salespersons that is getting addressed in very detail. On stakeholders, you are only giving them cues how to read their personality, but you're not obviously doing the assessment of the customer's personality in a scientific manner over there. But at least if you teach them how can they pick up some signals, clues, and then customize their communication, you have tools available today, and why would you not use something? I think I keep repeating this, sales is the only function that earns money for any company. Everything else is an expense function.
Hmm.
So don't be stingy and don't think कि कितना पैसा खर्च कर रहे हैं, what will happen. That's the only revenue generating function. All the
Hmm.
fancy leadership conferences, you spend half of that on your sales team, you would get much better results, in my personal opinion. I hope this recording is not going to some leaders, who are clients. But
Which is still 80% of your business, Rajiv. So we'll try not to broadcast it. Okay. So again, frameworks and tools that can help diagnose challenge. Maybe a minute each, because I think we are running out of time. So, Rakesh.
So, firstly, is sales complex? It becomes complex. Sales by its own nature is not complex. That's my 2 cents to this. There's a very big need to simplify sales. Simplifying sales does not mean keeping it, looking upon it, oh, it's such a simple cliche. This is such a simple thing. Simplifying things is basically focusing on the right things, which is basically 4 factors. And I'll come to the tools part as well. One is the attitude, second is the empathy, third is your advocacy, and fourth is your ability to co-create. If you're able to do these 4 things right as an organization, your customers will buy from you. You don't have to sell. So simplify, simplify, simplify. That's point number 1. Point number 2, are there tools and technologies available to facilitate this simplification process? The answer is yes. At a process level, explore transforming your CRM systems into belief systems. Number 1. Number 2, and this is, I'm a big fan of this, so I'm talking about this. Please implement self-awareness programs within your teams and at an individual level. The more you are aware, and please understand, it's not about, oh, am I aware of my capabilities or am I aware of my qualities? That's one way of looking at it, but just flip the same thing in a different way. How are my clients seeing me? And the whole game changes. So use your self-awareness tools that are available to actually try and figure out how are you actually appearing in front of your clients. That's also going to tell you what your competencies are, by the way, your sales competencies. You should know what your sales competencies are, not because you can then flag it off and say, this is my strength, but rather, hey, this strength is with these strengths, I'm able to address these set of customers. But what if I develop these missing strengths as well? My world opens up even bigger. Because today you're a sales maker, tomorrow you'll be a sales leader, someday you would want to be a CEO of a company. You cannot say, oh, as a CEO of a company, I have mastered the art of 5 skills. That doesn't help you. So technology will play a big, big role. Use a combination of transforming your CRM systems and also implementing self-awareness tools, if there are, and which there are, of course, tools like Lumina, Hogan, and others, of course.
So this is interesting that you're right, that I think the blind spots, getting married to what has been a strength, repeating them. I find that at senior level, problem doesn't happen because of your low scores in personality or your gaps. You usually get killed by overdoing your strengths. And you're overdoing them because you're not aware what the impact of the overdo is, because many of them are just not very good at taking feedback. I think psychometrics is a great way to get feedback. It's data you created. It's not hurting you. It's objective. Take it or leave it. No one's gonna bottle it down. So I just see what separates leaders is their ability to invite and implement feedback, right? And I think psychometry is a great safe way because you created that document in a way. Actually, Sonam, I see that you put the influence model. It's very good. By all means, also tag in a sample of a Lumina sales report because the design is intuitive. Rakesh already used the idea of sales competencies. People will enjoy it. Raghu, I'm still coming back to you for a quick response on frameworks and tools, and do psychometrics help?
Sure. So I think it all begins with clarity from the business on what's going to be my source of growth. And this is something I learned from my very early days in GSK. We always used to have something called a SOGA, source of growth analysis. And it's very simple. You get business either by getting more customers or by getting more consumption. There is no third way. You either get more people to buy or you get people to buy more. There's no third way to do this. So the tools that you will use will depend on where you are as an organization. Are you for instance, if you're in real estate, it's very obvious that you will get more customers. That's going to be a source of growth. You cannot spend energies depending on more consumption for a real estate business. Whereas for some other business, let's say a large engineering services business, you can get the same client to buy more from you. So the tools that you use will depend on where you stand as a business from a source of growth perspective. Building on that, there are 2 sides to it. There is an outside-in tool, there is an inside-out tool as well. And when I say outside-in, there are several tools which help us understand the business landscape of the customer. There are simple tools that we use like customer empathy map, which helps you to understand what are the fears, aspirations, etc. of the customer. There is it often helps to take an external perspective. Sometimes something even as simple as a market visit by an external party will throw up things that you missed out because you're so busy with your daily outcomes. A simple 2 days spent in the market from an external agency will give you a lot of insights, will give you a lot of intelligence. So that's the outside in part. There are several tools. There is the inside out part as well. And I'll put both of these under the bracket of analytics, Rahul. Right? The data, the outside in, that is the standard analytics that a lot of organizations are carrying today. Analytics, we cannot do sales without analytics today. We need that. But are we doing analytics from an inside out, which is exactly what you said, Rahul? The awareness of what I can bring best to the table. Am I doing too much of something which is damaging my sale? So for sure, yes, psychometrics do help us a lot, and it's beginning to get traction. Yeah.
Wonderful. So I must admit, I'm trying to like gather my thoughts, but I'm also distracted by the clock. So I did want to like, just bring it together to say what is coming through. It's a bit like, your own physical well-being. Just the diet won't do it, and just the yoga won't do it. You got to mix it all up. You got to do a little bit of the strength training. You got to eat properly. You got to sleep well. It's a lot of things coming together. So there's no like cookie cutter answer, no simple solution. Now, I know that we've run over time, so maybe we'll take in a couple of questions. And with my respect to all of the audience, I didn't mean to like keep you longer the middle of the week. But for those of you who want to stay on, we'll tackle a couple of questions. So now I'm going to need your help.
Sure.
If you can just throw us a couple of questions for our panelists.
Yeah. So we have a few questions from the audience. First one is from Megha regarding sales trainings. So mostly salespeople in an organization are trained on how to close the deal effectively, but nobody is focusing on relationship management for a long-term gain. She would like to understand what could be the strategies for relationship management post-sales, especially when you deal in the business of recurring revenue, example, recruitment and staffing.
Okay, so what I might do, just for the interest of time, I'll invite one of the panelists to take a shot. Raghu, do you feel ready to take that one?
Sure, I can do that. Yeah. So a lot of businesses today are getting into this concept of account management, and that's where the entire bit of recurring revenue lies. The great part about businesses with that can give you recurring revenue is you already have an entry into that organization. You know the touch points. The factor that starts changing the game is how curious are you, not about deals, how curious are you to understand your customer's business? And personally, for me, that's what excites me the most about the L&D business, because there are so many industries, so many organizations we get to learn about. A great way to help you get recurring revenue is to use
So I'm not the only one, huh? Raghu's
build a sense with your customers.
Raghu, I think we've lost you there for a little.
But currently you're offering only one organization to build relations. Okay, are we good now?
Are you going to have to rewind the last 60 seconds?
Sorry, yeah. So if say I have got 10 products to sell, 10 offerings for a customer, but right now my working relationship is only with one particular offering, I should be conscious that it's a blessing because I already have an entry to the organization. I know who are the stakeholders I need to speak to. Now I have a choice. Either I leave the relationship at a transactional level, which is okay, the service continues and we keep hoping we'll get more and more of the same service. Or I be deliberate about building more and more relationships within the client's organization. So can I build relationships within the organization without really having an immediate, because the more I
Losing Raghu's voice.
Yeah,
Okay.
Raghu.
So
should I just give it?
Yeah, so I tell you what, Raghu, If you can put a couple of like bullet points that you are in your mind in the chat box also. I think you might have dropped off. So just for the interest of time, I say another follow-up question by Shweta. I'm going to just give a quick answer to that. Shweta, you talked about the sales training needs to bring in the personal behavioral angle, but people will have different unique traits and everything. Look, your design has to be complete in itself. Your training design has to have all its elements. What the personal behavior side, the psychometric reveals to the person which part of that program design they have to put more energy on, right? So I might be somebody who's good at relationship building, but I may not be very good at closing. So when I have my psychometric, I know where to put my energy. So it's so the program creates that personalized experience if you have some kind of a psychometric with you. So that was a quick answer to that question. Sonam, you said one more question.
We have two
Because
more questions. One is directed to Rakesh from Preeti.
okay.
Faced with a customer who does not know what to buy or how to buy, would we lean on our capability to sell? Oftentimes, for sales to happen, someone needs to sell, and your comments are invited.
Well, that's interesting. And you know, the very fact that the statement is coming that the client doesn't know what he wants to buy,
Mm,
that itself, uh, and we've seen this as well. It could be an unconscious bias because nobody is going to spend money for something which they do not really know, what it's going to do for them. So, if I was you, Preeti, I would basically try to really explore what's the outcome that they are wanting to accomplish through this initiative. Yeah, what is the impact it's going to be causing? Who are the stakeholders that are really going to be impacted through this initiative? Because the answers will be somewhere within that organization. And if it's not, then you need to really take a qualification call whether it's a deal to pursue or not. Because if there are no tangible outcomes itself, what are you going to be measured, or what are you going to be even proposing? So I'm just going to leave that thought in front of you. Qualify, but before you qualify outwards, qualify inwards, in the
mm,
sense, have I asked these questions from my client?
mm, mm. Yeah, and I think it's a bit of a mirror of the sales cycle, right? There's also an internal client side cycle also going on every time in the buying process. Sunam, you have a last question?
We have a last question from Surekha. If we have to focus on personality of self and customer, it will lead to infinite combinations. Is the salesperson really ready or an expert on personality reading?
All right. So Rajiv, I guess by default that's you to tackle that.
Okay. And I'll pick up what you said in between, Rahul, when you were mentioning about the example of art as a field. So it does look as if personality leads to infinite combinations, but I think like you have three primary colors, and then a lot of combinations happen purely by your ability, which is the art part, to decide what proportion to mix at what time and what effect it will give. So I think um, there are easy, simple ways to begin looking at personality in a simpler manner to begin with. And as you start practicing more and more, obviously you can keep going into as many number of combinations as possible. But at a very simple level, is someone a quick decision maker or takes a long time to take the call? It's a pretty simple thing that most salespeople who have met any customer for 2, 3 times will be able to tell you. That does this person immediately give me yes or a no, or does this person tell me, Achar, keep this with me, I'll study it, and then I'll get back to you. Now, I'm saying there are simple ways to begin doing it, and then obviously you can keep making your own combinations as many as you want. But without that, only process is only very average sales outcome.
And can I just add to what Rajiv said, if that's okay? Yeah, Rahul?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
Sales is basically a journey of it starts with objection handling, maturity, to objection prevention. That's the basic journey. And it actually is across those four. You don't have to be an expert in personality reading. All you have to really wear is what kind of an attitude are you wearing, which the other person is the other person going to be receptive to your attitude or no? Second, is the client getting a feeling that that they are being heard? Third, are you pitching something because that's something which you have or which something they want. And fourth, have you involved them in the decision process or co-creation? You don't have to be a personality expert. You just got to be true to these 4 principles. And then the world is open for you in as many.
Fantastic. So I want to start to conclude that. And some of the things that came out is that there's not one single answer. It's not either or. When we go into skill and training, there's no getting away from that. There might be variation depending on the kind of selling you do, the what you sell. But what is true, therefore, is that selling has to also be something that goes into the building of the culture. You train a person, but you put them back in an environment where they're able to not only cultivate those skills, but also continue in a sustained way be supportive. Then the other side is the human side, because at the end of the day, people need to trust you. They need to see your vulnerability, your authenticity. So you need to build that relationship. But then it also needs your mindset, because like Raghu said, it's a game of rejection. So you need the person's own personality also plays out. And of course, that personality will determine where they're excelling in the sales cycle, where they're falling short. At the end of the day, we are all salespeople. We are selling something or the other all the time. If not products, then ideas. And all of us, do a few things well. Psychometrics or personality assessments certainly play a part to do a very good diagnostics, so that when you go into a program with a sales report, you know where to put your energy. When you have diagnostic on a team profile, then you also know which is the area where you have to put a laser sharp focus. Without a diagnostics, the people who are the decision makers can get sidetracked by their own biases and experiences. So to that, I want to bring a conclusion. I want to thank my panelists. They've been very generous in your share. Thank you so much. And Sonam, fantastic job in putting it all together. Well done. And to all of the people, the diehards who stayed on, thank you so much. Much as we are here to share, your presence also gives us energy. So with that, I want to conclude the day. Thank you so much. Good evening. Have fun for the whatever remains of the evening.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so
Thank
much,
you.
Rahul, Rakesh, Raghu, and all the participants. Thank you, Sonam.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you so much.
Everyone for joining.
Thank you.
If I can just ask the panelists to stay back, right? All
You're
right.
going to do an assessment and evaluation, Rahul? It's like,
सब करेंगे. First, I'll remove the pin. ठीक है. Evaluation, the madam will do that. So, okay. So, have we got who we got? Sonam, have you been able to close the room out? Anybody you need to
Not yet.
We still
move in
have a
the?
couple of participants.
Yeah, you can move them to the waiting room then, because they may not be here anymore.
Also, if we can stop recording.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we are good now.